Hello everyone, my name is Jonathan Rossman, and today I'll be doing Law 31, control the options, get others to play the cards that you deal. Basically it's saying you give your enemy choices, but all the choices that they're offered really suck for them. The purpose is to disguise yourself as the agent of power by giving them the belief that they have choices, but in reality they're all beneficial to you. There's a really good book example, Ivan the Terrible was a Russian king in 1553. He had a whole lot of enemies from all sides that were about to attack him. He knew he needed more authority. He wasn't quite terrible yet. And the boyars, the princely class, were terrorizing the peasants, and they were out to get Ivan and his power. So he decided one day he publicly packed up all of his belongings and left Moscow for a small city in the south. Residents were confused and they were really terrified that the boyars were going to take over, so they all closed up their shops and fear really gripped Moscow. So Ivan stayed there for a month and he sent a letter of resignation to Moscow. It was publicly read aloud in the square, and merchants and the commoners were really pissed off at the boyars because they thought that it was their fault that Ivan resigned, and it terrified the boyars with their mob fury. And they begged Ivan to come back, but he said, "No, you know what, I'm good." So basically, then Ivan gave the residents a choice. You can either grant me the powers to govern how I want, or you can find a new leader. So basically, he was giving them a choice between civil war within the country or dictator powers for himself. The residents chose dictator powers, and he returned to much fanfare. And eventually, even if they hated having a dictator, too bad, they chose it themselves. This is a classic way of controlling the options, withdrawal and disappearance. Basically, I stay away and you suffer the consequences, or I come back and we do it my way. The book talks about there are many different ways of controlling the options. One's called Color the Choices. Henry Kissinger was the Secretary of State under Richard Nixon, and Nixon was a really insecure man so Kissinger couldn't offend him. So Kissinger would offer him 3 or 4 options, in which one was clearly the best compared to the others. So it would make Nixon feel smart that he chose the right one, but in reality, Kissinger knew all along this is the option that we should be doing. Another one's called Alter the Playing Field. John Rockefeller wanted an oil monopoly in the early 1900s, but he couldn't just straight up buy all the smaller companies because they would resist. So he decided to buy the railway companies that transported the oil. So when he went to take each small oil company one by one and they resisted, he would say, all right, well, I'm going to refuse to ship you oil in the future, or I'm going to raise the fees for our railways. So that's a really good tactic to use against those who resist at all costs. Another one's called the shrinking options. So basically, you raise the price every time a buyer hesitates. So you can say, well, you can buy this now for $5, but if you wait until tomorrow, it's going to be $10. That's a really good tactic against indecisive people to control their options. Finally, another one's called Brothers in Crime. It's a classic con artist technique. It's really blackmail, which is kind of messed up. But so you try to get your biggest threat to join forces with you and do something bad, commit a crime or something, and that bond of guilt will force their silence in the future if it's needed. A more cynical example is the current United States government structure. You basically only have 2 choices, Republicans or Democrats. And a lot of people complain when they go to the polls and elect someone that I basically chose the lesser of 2 evils. And that's pretty much the crux of this law. You only have 2 choices, and neither one of them are really very good. This also works with parenting. You can tell your kids, do you want to brush your teeth before you read this book or after you read this book? It still accomplishes them brushing their teeth. Do you want to eat your peas or your carrots? You're still making them eat their veggies. Finally, another one I thought of is ISIS. They're really perfecting this law right now. They're definitely controlling the options against the U.S. and other world powers. They're basically saying, hey, you can start a war with us and we'll get tons more recruits and more global terrorism. Or you can do nothing and would just let us continue our rampage across the Middle East. So that's my overview of Law 31, controlling the options. Thank you very much.